Well, thanks for joining us again. This is Things They Usually Don't Teach You. I'm Bill Merrell, the host, and this is our April edition of the program. We start off with the first slide. Maybe. Okay, what is the only animal born with horns? Your selection is reindeer, goats, giraffes, or rhinoceroses. And the answer is giraffes. Technically, a horn has to be comprised of keratin, a protein that is also used to make hair, at least in part. While they are technically born with these things called ossicones, which are technically horns, the ossicones start out bent to avoid injuring the mother, and then grow longer and straight after the giraffe is born. Most other horned animals are born without horns because the horns would be a major threat to the mother in the womb. What is the largest type of deer? Reindeer, moose, chital, elk. I always wait to hear what answers I'm hearing. The answer is moose. They are by far the largest of the deer family, with males weighing over a ton and having antlers that stretch 6 feet from tip to tip. While moose are gigantic and heavy, they enjoy swimming and walking through streams and swamps. My son did a program for Carnegie Mellon in Alaska one time, took a walk, and took a picture of a moose. And I asked him why. He said, because I wanted to show you as I was walking up this path what was going to kill me. He said it was the front foot was on one side of a 14-foot walkway, and the back foot was on the other side. Oh, by the way, the chital's a small deer, if you wondered. What state has never had a 0-degree temperature reading? You knew this one, Hawaii. The American state of Hawaii has never reported a temperature of 0 degree Fahrenheit, which is the only state in all of the United States of America that has never dropped below 0, at least in recorded history. The sum of the opposite sides of dice are always equal to 7. No matter what number of dice lands on the roll, you can bet the number plus directly across from it will equal 7. This has not always been the case, but with modern dice, opposite sides always add up to 7. The number 7 holds a special place with dice, as it is also the most likely sum you will get when you roll a pair of dice. This is because there are 6 different combinations that will end up equal to the number 7. Leonardo da Vinci took 12 years to paint the lips of Mona Lisa. If you ever think that your creative project is dragging on, just remember the fact and put your mind at ease. Leonardo da Vinci, one of the greatest inventors and creative minds of all time, first began the Mona Lisa painting in 1503. He carried it wherever he went and worked on it constantly. And many art historians believe it took him over 12 years just to paint the infamous smirk of Mona Lisa's mouth. Just imagine trying to paint one body part for over a decade. 4 times as many people speak English as a second language than there are native speakers. Approximately 1.5 billion people on Earth speak English. Of those 1.5, approximately 400 million are native English speakers, meaning that they speak English as their first language. There are almost 4 times as many people who speak English as a second language and as a learned language than there are people who speak English as a native language. That means that there are approximately 1.2 billion people on Earth who speak English as a second language. It is the most widely used second language in the world. No other word rhymes with purple. While you may think orange is the only color that has no rhyming words, there is actually a second. Purple is another entry on the long list of English words that have no perfect rhyme. A perfect rhyme is a word that rhymes perfectly with another word, as opposed to an imperfect rhyme, which can sound like it but almost rhymes but does not actually. Purple has no perfect rhymes and is only a very select few imperfect rhymes. For example, the word turtle sounds like it almost rhymes with purple, but is an imperfect rhyme. Stanley Kubrick destroyed almost all of his props and sets on 2001: A Space Odyssey. Famed director Stanley Kubrick was known as a bit of an eccentric. What he did on the film props and sets of 2001: A Space Odyssey is par for the course. Kubrick had nearly every prop and set from the film destroyed after filming. He did not want them to be used in any other works of art and did not want them to be placed in a museum, and therefore he thought the only course of action was to remove the props and sets from existence. Chewbacca was inspired by George Lucas's dog. George Lucas, the man famous for creating and directing the original Star Wars trilogy, had a pet Alaskan Malamute, a huge and hairy dog breed that became the basis for Chewbacca. Lucas said that the dog, Indiana, would regularly join him in the front passenger seat of his car and act like a co-pilot, which is where he got the idea for Chewbacca as Han's co-pilot. There were female gladiators in ancient Rome. Well, everyone knows, or everyone may know, the bloody history of Colosseum in ancient Rome and the gladiators who fought within it. Not many people know that there were female gladiators, also called gladiatrix. A female gladiator found herself in all the predicaments as her male counterpart. Gladiatrixes fought one another, dueled with wild animals such as lions and tigers, and entertained audiences with their martial prowess at games and festivals. While little is known about the gladiatrix, at present historians and researchers are finding more evidence of them as they dive deeper into ancient Rome. And I'm not going to say this word because I'm going to mess it up. Is the fear of getting peanut butter stuck on the roof of your mouth. Well, this is the fear your pet dog certainly might not have. That word is the fear of having peanut butter get stuck on the roof of your mouth. The name comes from ancient Greeks, where archre translate into ground nut, butre translates into butter, and phobia translates into fear. This fear can also be commonly referred to people who are afraid of choking on peanut butter, which seems to be more logical fear than having it stuck in the roof of your mouth. Space apparently smells like diesel, gunpowder, and barbecue. Surprisingly enough, space actually has a smell to it. According to various astronauts and cosmonauts, the Russian version of astronauts, space smells like a combination of diesel fumes, gunpowder, and barbecue. Now, we know you are wondering how they smell anything when they cannot take off their helmets without immediately dying. There are some traces of the smell left over after they return into their space shuttle after a spacewalk, and those smells are a weaker version of what actually space would smell like. U.S. police officers wear blue because it is the color of loyalty. While there are several reasons that American police officers wear the color blue, the reason they started was that the color blue is the color of loyalty. When people see blue, they think of loyalty and therefore see the police as an ally and not an enemy. Another reason that the blue uniform works so well is that it is easy to keep clean and does not show stains. It is also a dark enough color that allows police to be hidden at night if they need to sneak up on a criminal. Those who like to collect ties are called grabitologists. Do you find a new tie mysteriously appears in your closet every week? Or that no matter how hard you try and stay away from the tie selection at the store, you find yourself gravitating towards it like a planet around the sun? If so, you may be a grabitologist or someone who is obsessed with collecting ties. Don't worry. Though you join such famous people as Winston Churchill, James Bond, Jerry Lewis, Bill Nye the Science Guy in your love of neckwear. And I have to admit to this, when I was teaching my students drew a picture of every tie that I wore in class, and at the end of the school year, I came up with 100 ties in there counting. French fries were created in Belgium and not France. The humble beginnings of the French fry have been traced by historians back to Belgium, where potatoes were being fried in a general shape since the late 1600s. According to the historians, many Belgian villagers would eat fried fish that they caught from the river. When the river froze over, they looked for alternatives to eat. They ended up trying to fry the potato in the same way that they fried the fish, and French fries were born. The most expensive pair of shoes are the ruby slippers designed by Harry Winston that are inspired by ones Dorothy wore in The Wizard of Oz. Although the original shoes these are based on were just a prop in the movie, the pair of Harry Winstons, commemorating the famous and beloved movie, The Wizard of Oz, cost $3 million. It took 2 months, 4,600 rubies, and 50 carats of diamonds to create the shoes. The U.S. government paid $16 million for the film of JFK's assassination. You have probably seen it, the grainy film footage of JFK being shot while waving to a crowd in the open top of his car. Well, that film originally belonged to the Zapruder family, who recorded the shooting by accident while taking in the presidential motorcade in Dallas. While the U.S. government ended up paying the family $16 million in 1999 for the official rights to the footage, as well as taking the original film from the family. In some places, bird saliva is an expensive delicacy. Bird's nest soup is often called the caviar of the East, as it is both extremely rare and extremely valuable, only eaten by the richest people in the fanciest of locations. What makes the bird's nest soup so interesting is that the main ingredient in it is made from bird saliva. The bird in question, the swiftlet, makes small nests out of twigs and saliva. These nests can cost anywhere between $2,500 and $10,000 per kilogram, which results in a single bowl of soup costing an average of $100. Cheese is the most stolen food in the world. Everyone loves cheese, except for those poor souls who are lactose intolerant. Ah, who are we kidding? Even lactose intolerant people love cheese. It's just their bodies that despise them later. Since everyone loves cheese, it may come as no surprise that cheese is the most shoplifted food in the United States of America. Cheese is stolen at a much higher rate than any other food for a myriad of reasons. One reason is that it can be seen as overpriced, and another is that most cheeses are small and easily concealable. Chocolate is as healthy as fruit. This might just be the best news you hear all year. Some scientists believe that chocolate should be classified as a superfruit. That is correct. That delicious delicacy that you crave but you know you shouldn't eat too much of is right up there with blueberries on the superfruit list. The reason behind this is the dark chocolate is a rich source of antitoxins and contains more polyphenols and than poor fruit juice. So next time the doctor tells you you need more fruit in your diet, you know where to head. NASA shows the film Armageddon during their management training program. NASA, the American Institute in charge of the space travel, watches the film Armageddon in their management training program. It is not because the film is amazing and accurate, but exactly the opposite reason. The film, according to NASA, has 168 distinct things that are humanly impossible, not improbable, but impossible. Because of these impossibilities, NASA likes to see which one of their management can pick out and which ones are merely improbable. With 150 minutes of the running time, that is over one impossibility per minute. China did not win an Olympic medal until 1984. While China is now a dominant force in the Olympic Games, that dominance only started relatively recently. They won their first medal, which also happened to be the first gold medal, in 1984 when Zhai Haifeng won the gold in shooting. Since then, China is one of the highest-ranked countries for the Summer Olympics. After Haifeng won in 1984, the youngest Chinese athlete ever to win a gold medal in 1992 was this young lady, who was only 13 at the time, won the gold medal in platform diving, making her the second youngest individual medalist ever. Susan B. Anthony was fined $750 for voting in the 1872 election. In 1872, Susan B. Anthony was fined $750 for unlawfully voting in the election. Anthony is considered a pioneer in the quest for women receiving equal rights as men, and former President Donald Trump pardoned the fine of Anthony on the 100th anniversary of the trial. Anthony voted in the presidential race of Ulysses S. Grant and Horace Greeley, fully aware that what they were doing was illegal. A mile on the ocean and on land are not the same distance. While it seems counterintuitive, a mile on land and a mile in the water are not the same distance. A mile on land is based on a measurement of paces, while a mile on the sea, commonly known as a nautical mile, is based on degrees of latitude around the globe. This difference in measurement ends up with approximately 700-foot difference between the miles, with a land mile measurement at 5,300 feet and a nautical mile measurement at 6,000. The Statue of Liberty has a point in her crown for each continent. The Statue of Liberty, found in New York City in the United States of America, stands several hundred feet high and is topped with a gigantic crown. That crown has 7 points on it, one for each continent on Earth. As well as the 7 continents, the 7 points are also known to represent rays of light and the 7 seas. The rays of light representation comes from the original name of the Statue of Liberty, Liberty and Lighten of the World. There are 2 other examples of the Statue of Liberty, and much smaller and located in Paris, France. Who invented the battery? Thomas Edison, Alessandro Volta, Leonardo da Vinci, Nikola Tesla. And the answer is Volta. What just happened? Oh. Okay, the first true battery was invented in the year 1800 when Volta produced the voltaic pile. The voltaic pile was made up of pairs of copper and zinc discs that were piled on top of each other and separated by a layer of cloth or cardboard. Although they invented the first battery, Volta and his fellow scientists were not sure how it worked. Maya Angelou was the first black female streetcar conductor in San Francisco. While she is known across the world as a great writer and poet, Maya Angelou is also another claim to fame in the history books. She was the first female black streetcar conductor in San Francisco ever. She accomplished this feat as a teenager, well before she made her name, writing such famous poetry as "I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings" and "The Heart of a Woman." The perfect mate. If life is getting you down at all, here is a fact specifically designed to cheer you up. Seahorses are monogamous life mates that travel in pairs while holding each other's tail. Every ball used in Major League Baseball is dirty. No baseball you have ever seen used in a Major League game has been clean. The official MLB rules state that a baseball must be rubbed in the mud before every game to make sure that the ball has a consistent grip, which new clean balls do not. This is such an important part of baseball that the Major League Baseball has its own specific mud supplier. For decades, the MLB has used Bentiff's mud to dirty up the baseballs before the games. An NFL team may try an uncontested field goal after a fair catch. The American football is filled with strange and complex rules. For instance, after a fair catch, which is when the receiving team opts to receive the ball off a kickoff without trying to return it, excepting the spot of the catch, the receiving team may try for a field goal. On this particular field goal attempt, the team may try a field goal from the spot they received the fair catch, and the opposing team is not allowed to try to block it. While this rule is rarely used, it does exist. A fishy fact. Once a year in the Honduran city of Yoro, it rains fish. It's aptly named by the rain of fish in May or June each year. Like clockwork, a torrential rainstorm rolls through town. In its wake, a mass of living fish can be found on the streets. The phenomenon was confirmed by the National Geographic team in the 1970s. But whether or not the fish are literally rained from the sky, it's still unknown. Some scientists believe the fish could be carried into town by water spouts or water tornadoes, which drop their strange parcels over land when they run out of steam. Whatever the explanation, we hope the residents of Yoro like seafood. Interesting fact, unless you're this whale. The loneliest creature on earth is a whale that has been calling for a mate for over 2 decades. Researchers identified the whale's abnormally high call over 20 years ago. The unknown whale is called lonely because it communicates at a high frequency not used by any other whale in the North Pacific, and so far it has never received a response. Never give up, never surrender. Long after World War II ended, a Japanese soldier named Hiro Onoda hid in the jungle on the Pacific island of Liebang, where he held out for 29 years, refusing to believe that the war was over. The man who found him, Norio Suzuki, was traveling around the world to look for, in his own words, Lieutenant Onoda, a panda, and an abominable snowman in that order. Suzuki returned to Japan with Onoda's story, which immediately became a sensation. Bless you. You can't sneeze in your sleep because the brain shuts down the reflex. That's why you never wake up with a giant dream with a might sneeze. Christmas in Vietnam. If you were listening to the radio in Vietnam in April 1975, you might have heard a surprising song, Bing Crosby's White Christmas. That's because it was the secret signal for Americans to evacuate the country in an event called Operation Frequent Wind. Speaking of the White Christmas, here's another fun fact. Bing Crosby's Ode to the Holiday is the best-selling single of all time. It's true. $500,000 on your head. The F-35 fighter is one of the most expensive military projects of all time. It is estimated by the time the project is finished, it will help cost $1.4 trillion. Clearly, no expense was spared at any point, and that includes the pilot's helmet. Each F-35 helmet cost a whopping $400,000. Searching for giants. The expedition of Lewis and Clark is famous for many reasons, but they have one goal you might not expect. Thomas Jefferson asked them to find a mammoth. Turns out Jefferson had a thing for mammoths, or more accurately, the American mastodon. He was completely enamored with the extinct behemoths and held out hope that they continued to live many miles away in the west of America. So when he sent Lewis and Clark out on their famous expedition, he told them to look out for mammoths. Crocs of a feather. Crocodiles and alligators are archosaurs, a classification they share with a surprising relative, birds. Crocodilians and dinosaurs both evolved from the common ancestor. While birds evolved from dinosaurs, that means that your pet cockatoo is closer relative to crocodiles than a lizard is. Space in the Pharaohs. Scholars generally agree that the ancient Egyptian empires lasted for thousands of years, which can be hard to wrap your head around. To put it in perspective, the Great Pyramids of Giza were built roughly between 2550 and 2490 BC. While Cleopatra took the throne in 51 BC, that means that Cleopatra's reign was closer to the time of the Apollo 11 moon landing than it was to building the Great Pyramid. How do you sing along? Spain's national anthem has no words. It's called Marcha Real, and it's one of 4 anthems on earth that is entirely instrumental. The other countries are Bosnia, Herzegovina, Kosovo, and San Marino. I get tongue-tied after a while on these things. Watching the universe. The static on your old TV set is actually caused in part by the Big Bang. Television static is caused by your antenna picking up radiation in the atmosphere. Much of it is known as cosmic microwave background, which is the leftover radiation from the formation of the universe. Next time you're stuck watching static on TV, remember that you are looking at part of the beginning of our universe. Pretty cool. Okay, I think we're going to stop now, and we're going to, in fact, wait for the second half after the commercial. So look forward to seeing you on the other side. Well, thanks for coming back. This is the second half of the things they usually don't teach you for the April 2023 edition. When we last left you, we were watching the universe and talking about the static on your TV from the Big Bang. Okay, we learned fast. Before 1903, no human had ever achieved powered flight. But once we passed that barrier, progress started happening fast. Airplanes were used in warfare within a decade, and people had landed on the moon just 66 years after the first flight. Not bad considering people have been trying to fly for centuries. More unique than unique. Inhabitants of Fort Cog in Montana found snowflakes that were more than a foot across during a snowstorm in 1887. Some of the flakes were 15 inches wide, the biggest ever recorded. The wealth gap. If you combine the wealth of the 48th poorest nations on earth, they would still have less money than the world's 3 richest people. And those people are Bernard Arnault, Elon Musk, and Jeff Bezos. Duck money. Scrooge McDuck was named by Forbes as the richest fictional character in the world. They estimated his personal net worth to be $65.4 billion. They said he made his money in mining and treasure hunting, and that he kept most of his wealth, of course, in his gold coin swimming pool. Worth your salt. Ancient Greeks and Romans often bought slaves with salt. That is where the phrase, "not worth your salt," comes from. If we only had this today, in ancient Greece there was a system where citizens could vote to exile a politician for 10 years. It was actually meant for any citizen, really, and it was called ostracismos, as in, you've got it, ostracism. And it was used less as a form of punishment and more as a preemptive strike against people thought to be a threat against the democracy or the state. Lobsters taste with their feet. Tiny bristles inside a lobster's little pinchers are their equivalent to human taste buds. Meanwhile, lobsters' teeth are in one of their 3 stomachs. Lobsters are one of these foods some professional chefs cook in the microwave. There is a reason why passports come in 4 colors. Here's a weird fact that you might surprise you, and if they are dirty, it's not noticeable. Have you ever wondered why there isn't a hot pink passport? The reason is because most countries prefer dark shades of red, green, and blue, since these dark colors look more official. The shortest commercial flight in the world is in Scotland. Yes, it's true. The Scottish regional airline Loganair operates the shortest commercial flight in the world between the islands of Westray and Papa Westray, 1.7 miles, which is a scheduled flight for 90 seconds. British tanks are equipped to make tea. There is a boiling vessel inside so the crew can make tea and coffee anytime, including during battle. How frightfully English. New stats have just confirmed our complete dependency on tea. With a YouGov survey study, over 2,000 British people revealed that an average British person enjoys 884 cups of tea per year, which sounds like a lot, enough to fill 2 bathtubs, apparently, but only amounts to 2.5 cups per day. If you ever watch the programs Midsummer Murders or Dr. Martin, you'll see that every time they turn around, they're offering or taking tea. The Eiffel Tower was originally intended for Barcelona. The Spanish city thought the design was too ugly, so Gustave Eiffel pitched it to Paris instead as a temporary landmark during its 1889 International Exposition. French critics didn't like it much either, though. Oh, I missed one here. Oh, getting ahead of myself. The letter Q does not appear in any state name. Out of all 50 states, not one has the letter Q in it. Scotland has more than 400 words for snow. There are a lot of weird facts out there, but how many of them involved word choice? In Scotland, yes, there are more than 400 words for snow. There are 423 or 421 to be exact. and some of the Scottish words for snow as you see there. Fact: Wally Amos is responsible for making more than just famous cookies. You may be familiar with Wally Famous Amos, thanks to his packaging chocolate chip cookies. But before he worked his magic on the sweet treats, he was in the business of making people famous. Biography reports he discovered and signed folk duo Simon and Garfunkel, and he was a talent rep for acts like Diana Ross, Sam Cooke, and Marvin Gaye. Fact: first person processed at Ellis Island was a 15-year-old girl from Ireland. On January 1st, 1892, Annie Moore was the first passenger to disembark at Ellis Island on its opening day. She had traveled to the United States with her two younger brothers aboard the SS Nevada after departing from Queenstown, Ireland, now known as Cobb. The statue of Annie Moore and her brothers, the first of 17 million Irish to be processed at Ellis Island, is on Ellis Island. Talking about Ellis Island, their busiest day. On April 17, 1907, Ellis Island had its busiest day ever, processing 11,747 individuals who just arrived at America. An average day had them processing around 5,000, so this must have overloaded them. According to the Ellis Island Foundation, during this historic month, April 1907, of American immigration, the Port of New York received 197 ships and more than 250,000 passengers from around the world. Most of these arrivals were immigrants intent on establishing a new life in America. 1,004,756 immigrants were processed in the year of 1907. Put that in perspective, last year reported that 4 million came over our southern border, and they weren't processed, most of them. The Windy City nickname has nothing to do with Chicago's weather. If you live in Chicago, you might already know this random fact, but we're betting most other people don't. Chicago's nickname was coined by 19th century journalists who were referring to the fact that its residents were windbags and full of hot air. That's why it was known as the Windy City. Professional athletes used to perform in vaudeville during the off-season. Before today's big league salaries, professional baseball and football players often had to take jobs during the off-season. The Atlantic reports some of them took advantage of their name recognition and hit vaudeville circuits, doing everything from comedy routines to reciting poems. Babe Ruth even sang, if you could call it that. Frankly, many of the athletes had no business being on stage, but it's not like it was against the rules. The Pittsburgh Steelers' Terry Bradshaw was the second highest paid quarterback of all time in 1981 with a salary of $470,000. And this came from the Post-Gazette. The current American flag was designed by a high school student. Now, we hear a lot of Betsy Ross in the past, but once again, it started as a school project for Bob Heff's junior year history class in 1958, and it only earned a B-. His design had 50 stars, even though Alaska and Hawaii weren't states yet. Heft figured the two would earn their statehood soon and showed the government his design. After President Dwight D. Eisenhower called to say the design was approved. Heft's teacher changed his grade to an A. The human nose and ears get bigger as we age. It's pretty common to see the claim that our nose and ears are the only parts of our body that keep growing as we age, but that's not actually true. Our nose and ears stop growing along with the rest of our body, but thanks to the weight of gravity, both parts continue to lengthen over time, according to the Discovery Channel. The hashtag symbol isn't officially called hashtag or pound. Its technical name is octothorpe. The octo means 8 and refers to the points, though reports disagree on where Thorpe came from. Some claim it was named after Olympian Jim Thorpe, while others argue that it was just a nonsense suffix. Why are 12 persons required to sit on a jury? I bring this up because of the very important jury that's being satted at this time. In 2020, the Supreme Court finally reconsidered the anomaly created by Justice Powell's insistence on his idiosyncratic approach to incorporation of the Apopka versus Oregon in 1972, which resulted in a non-unanimous jury verdict in criminal cases being found acceptable in state courts, but not in federal courts. Under the Sixth Amendment, in his opinion for the court, Justice Gorsuch found Louisiana law allowing non-unanimous jury verdicts in criminal cases to be unconstitutional and threw out the conviction of a man found guilty by 10 out of the 12 jurors. Jot for jot incorporation of the Bill of Rights is now the rule for the Sixth Amendment, as well as others. I want to thank you very much for watching. These are some of the organizations that shared their information and knowledge with us today. So once again, we'd like to thank you very much for joining us. Look forward to seeing you in the next edition of the things they usually don't teach you. Thank you. Yeah, it was shorter